Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling a topic that might ruffle some feathers, but honestly, it could save your life. Bugging out. It sounds heroic, right? Grabbing your bag, heading into the wilderness, and surviving against all odds. It's the stuff of movies and survival fantasies. But here's the cold, hard truth. For most people, bugging out isn't just difficult, it's a death sentence. I know that's not what most preppers want to hear. So many of us have invested in bug-out bags, mapped escape routes, and imagined ourselves thriving in the wild when disaster strikes. But after years of training, research, and talking with actual survival experts and disaster victims, I've come to a troubling conclusion. The conventional wisdom on bugging out is dangerously wrong. If you stick around for the next few minutes, I promise you'll walk away with a completely different perspective on crisis readiness. I'm going to show you why bugging out often fails, why staying put is usually smarter, and give you specific, actionable strategies that actually increase your chances of survival when things go sideways. If you've built your preparedness plan around bugging out by default, this might be the most important video you watch this year. Before we dive in, take a second to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any of our practical, no-nonsense survival content. Your future self might thank you for it. Let's start by challenging what we think we know about bugging out. The images are compelling, right? Escaping the chaos of societal collapse, living off the land, and relying on your wits and skills to survive. Independence, freedom, and self-reliance all wrapped into one heroic journey. It makes for great TV, but terrible survival strategy. Here's the reality check most people need to hear. The overwhelming majority of people who plan to bug out have neither the physical conditioning nor the mental preparation to succeed. I'm not talking about being able to do a few push-ups or having watched some bushcraft videos. I'm talking about the stamina to hike 20+ miles with a heavy pack, day after day, in all weather conditions, while potentially being hunted, hungry, and sleep-deprived. How many of us can honestly say we're ready for that? Wilderness survival isn't indefinite either, even for experts. The most skilled outdoorsmen and women will tell you that long-term wilderness living requires an extraordinary depth of knowledge about specific environments, seasonal patterns, flora, fauna, and preservation techniques. Skills that take decades to master, not weekend courses or YouTube videos to acquire. Then there's the destination problem. Many bug-out plans I hear about essentially amount to head for the hills or go to national forest land. Without a specific vetted location that you've prepared in advance, you're not a survivor, you're a refugee. And in crisis situations, refugees become targets for desperate people or are avoided by those who might otherwise help. Emergency services and functioning communities quickly learn to view mass movers with suspicion, and for good reason. The harsh truth is that bugging out should be your last resort, not your default plan. When you look at actual disaster statistics and survival stories, the people who fare best are rarely the ones who immediately fled into the unknown. They're the ones who had layered, flexible plans that started with being prepared to shelter in place for as long as possible. So if bugging out is so dangerous, what's the alternative? Bugging in, securing your home and staying put is statistically your best option in most crisis scenarios. It's not as glamorous as the wilderness survival fantasy, but it's significantly more likely to keep you alive. And here's why. Your home is already your supply depot, your shelter, your water source, and your stronghold. You know every corner, every resource, and every weakness. You've spent years accumulating the things you need: tools, food, water filters, medical supplies, and they're all there, ready and waiting. The moment you abandon your home, you're limited to what you can carry, which is a fraction of what you might need. The core elements of effectively bugging in start with structural reinforcement. Stronger doors, secured windows, designated safe rooms, and perimeter awareness systems give you layers of protection that simply don't exist in the wild. You can create utility redundancy with solar panels, rain catchment systems, and stored fuel that would be impossible to transport if you bugged out. Your food preservation and rotation systems, those carefully organized pantries with first-in, first-out protocols, become invaluable when supply chains break down. Don't underestimate the passive defense advantages of staying home either. Tripwires, barking dogs, blackout curtains, and noise-damping measures make your home a much harder target than a tent in the woods or a backpack on the trail. You can maintain operational security in ways that are virtually impossible when you're constantly on the move. There's also the psychological aspect that many preppers overlook: morale. Having familiar surroundings, established routines, proper hygiene facilities, consistent sleep, and control over what information you consume can prevent the mental deterioration that often precedes physical collapse in survival situations. Your home is where you have the best chance of maintaining not just your body, but your mind. The bottom line is this: staying home buys you time and leverage, but only if you've prepared your home to function during various types of emergencies. Bugging in doesn't mean doing nothing. It means transforming your everyday living space into a survival capsule that can weather the storm while chaos unfolds outside. Now, I'm not saying you should never bug out. There are absolutely legitimate reasons to evacuate your home during a crisis. Fire, flood, toxic chemical releases, total collapse of local security, or physical destruction of your home are all valid reasons to get out fast. The key difference I want you to understand is between panicked flight and strategic relocation. When you do need to leave, you should be heading towards something, not just away from danger. This means having a secure destination already confirmed before disaster strikes. That could be a friend or family member's home in another region, a property you co-own with trusted people, or even a pre-arranged agreement with like-minded preppers who have room for your group in exchange for the skills or supplies you bring. Before you make the decision to leave your primary residence, you need to meet several critical criteria. First, that secure destination must be confirmed and ready to receive you, not just a hope or assumption. You should have either pre-cached supplies at this location or reliable hosts who have agreed to pool resources. Multiple vetted travel routes should be mapped out, with alternatives for different scenarios like roadblocks, floods, or fuel shortages. Perhaps most importantly, you need an honest self-assessment of your physical limits and group dynamics. If you're planning to bug out with elderly parents, young children, or people with medical needs, your plan needs to account for their limitations. How far can the slowest member of your group realistically travel on foot if vehicles become unusable? What medical supplies do specialized group members need, and how will you ensure access to them? These questions need solid answers before you pack a single bag. This is where the concept of layered evacuation plans becomes essential. Instead of thinking in binary terms, stay or go, you need a spectrum of options that escalate as conditions worsen. This approach gives you the flexibility to respond appropriately to any situation without immediately jumping to the most drastic option. Let's talk about how to build these layered evacuation plans, or LEPs as I call them. Think of them as a series of concentric circles, each representing a different level of response to increasing danger. Each layer has its own triggers, resources, and procedures, giving you options rather than just a single all-or-nothing plan. Layer 1 is your home base, staying put, tightening operational security, and carefully managing your supplies. This is your default position and should be sustainable for weeks or even months if you've prepared properly. You're monitoring the situation, conserving resources, and maintaining as much normalcy as possible while the initial crisis unfolds. Layer 2 involves short-range fallback options, places within a reasonable distance that you can reach quickly and easily. This might be a friend's house across town, a family member's property in the next county, a prepaid hotel room, or a partner property that you've invested in specifically for this purpose. The key is that these locations are close enough to reach without extensive travel, but far enough to be unaffected by localized disasters. Layer 3 takes you further out to long-range bug-out locations, land, cabins, or rural safe houses that you've either purchased, rented long-term, or arranged access to through trusted connections. These locations should be in completely different geographical areas, ideally with different resource bases, climate conditions, and risk profiles than your primary residence. Layer 4 is the most extreme mobile survival, either vehicle-based or on foot. This is the true bugging out scenario that most preppers imagine, but now it's your last resort rather than your first response. And because it's your last resort, you've prepared for it far more thoroughly than the average person who plans to head for the hills at the first sign of trouble. What makes LEPs so effective is that each layer is scalable across 4 key dimensions. You have a communication plan that adapts based on what systems are still functioning. Your transportation plan has redundancies built in, from fully fueled vehicles to bicycles to walking routes with caches along the way. Your resource resupply plan accounts for different durations and types of emergencies. And perhaps most importantly, Your group plan considers everyone involved, children, elderly family members, pets, and doesn't leave anyone behind. By building these layers into your preparedness strategy, you dramatically reduce panic when emergencies happen. You're not trying to make high-stakes decisions under extreme stress. You're simply implementing the appropriate layer of a plan you've already developed and practiced. This approach increases your survival percentages exponentially compared to the typical bug-out fantasy. With this layered approach in mind, we need to completely rethink what a bug-out bag actually is and what purpose it serves. It's not a one-stop survival solution that will magically keep you alive in the wilderness indefinitely. It's a tool, specifically a tool to get you safely from one secure location to another. This mental shift changes everything about how you pack and prepare. The first consideration is the brutal math of weight versus calories versus mobility. Every pound you carry slows you down and burns more calories, creating a vicious cycle that can quickly turn deadly. Your bug-out bag should be ruthlessly efficient, containing only what serves the specific purpose of helping you reach your next secure location. Cache, identification documents, and local maps become far more important in this framework than many of the survival gadgets that fill typical bug-out bags. In most realistic scenarios, you're moving through areas where human infrastructure still exists in some form, and the ability to buy, barter, or prove your identity often matters more than being able to catch wild game or build elaborate shelters. That said, certain small, high-impact tools earn their weight many times over. A quality fixed blade knife, ferro rod, portable water filter, and compact medical gear should form the core of your kit. The key is redundancy in critical functions, not redundancy in items. You need multiple ways to purify water, start fire, signal for help, and stop bleeding. But those methods should be diverse rather than duplicative. For those who take this seriously, consider the advanced tactic of micro-caching, stashing small supply packages along your most likely evacuation routes. These might be buried in waterproof containers, hidden in public spaces, or left with trusted people along the way. Even something as simple as a bottle of water, energy bars, and a fresh pair of socks can be life-saving when you're on the move. The bottom line is this: your bug-out bag isn't a wilderness survival kit. It's strategic movement gear designed with the specific purpose of getting you from point A to point B in a crisis. Every item should serve that mission directly, or it doesn't belong in the bag. Let's be clear about something. In a true survival situation, what you know is infinitely more valuable than what you have. Gear breaks, gets lost, or might be stolen. Skills stay with you as long as you're conscious. This is why developing practical survival skills should be your highest priority, far above accumulating gear or supplies. The core skill categories start with navigation, not just using GPS or smartphone apps, but real proficiency with map and compass, understanding terrain association, and being able to navigate by natural indicators when technology fails. Finding and treating water is next, because dehydration will kill you faster than almost anything else in a crisis. You need to know multiple methods for locating water sources and making that water safe to drink, regardless of what equipment you have available. Firecraft is another fundamental. The ability to create fire in wet weather, high winds, or at altitude using whatever materials are at hand. First aid skills, particularly dealing with bleeding, burns, and breaks, can mean the difference between life and death when professional medical help isn't accessible. And shelter building, understanding insulation, elevation, concealment, and how to use the environment to your advantage keeps you protected from the elements when you have no other options. Beyond these basics, there are lesser-known force multipliers that dramatically increase your chances of survival. Improvised hygiene keeps you healthy when traditional sanitation isn't available. Gray man behavior, the ability to blend in and avoid unwanted attention in chaotic urban environments, prevents you from becoming a target. Basic mechanical repair skills allow you to keep crucial tools and vehicles functioning. And understanding barter fluency, knowing what has value in different types of crises and how to trade effectively, helps you acquire what you need when conventional currency might be worthless. The takeaway here is simple, but profound. Gear breaks, but skills scale. The more you know, the less you need to carry, and the more adaptable you become to any situation. Investing time in skill development now pays dividends that no amount of purchased gear can match. Your vehicle might be the most important survival tool you own, but only if you've prepared it properly. A car or truck isn't just transportation, it's a mobile shelter, cargo carrier, power source, and security system all in one. But vehicles require systematic preparation to serve these roles effectively during a crisis. Start with the core checklist that should become second nature. Never let your fuel tank drop below half full. This gives you immediate range if you need to leave quickly. Maintain a rigorous schedule for basic maintenance and keep redundancy fluids, oil, coolant, brake fluid, transmission fluid stored in appropriate containers. Have a spare key accessible through a magnetic case or hidden location, because losing your only key during an emergency can render an otherwise functional vehicle useless. And perhaps most importantly, keep pre-packed go crates in or near your vehicle at all times, eliminating the need for last-minute packing that inevitably leads to forgotten essentials. For those who want to take vehicle preparation to the next level, consider some optional upgrades that dramatically increase capability. EMP-proof storage containers protect essential electronics from both natural and man-made electromagnetic pulses. Rooftop cargo systems expand your carrying capacity without sacrificing interior space. Off-road capable tires and at least one full-size spare extend your route options beyond paved roads. And basics like vehicle-specific fire extinguishers and mounted medical kits ensure you're prepared for common emergencies on the move. Remember this fundamental principle. A moving vehicle is a moving shelter, but only if it's ready before you need it. The time to prepare your bug-out vehicle is months or years before a crisis, not hours before you plan to leave. Every improvement you make now exponentially increases your options when time is critical and resources are scarce. One of the most dangerous myths in the prepper community is the lone wolf fantasy. The idea that you'll fare better on your own than with others during a crisis. When we look at actual survival stories throughout history, the pattern is crystal clear. Groups survive where individuals perish. There are profound reasons for this that go beyond mere sentimentality or social preference. Groups enable shared watches and rest cycles, meaning someone can always be alert while others recover. No single person can stay vigilant indefinitely, and sleep deprivation quickly leads to fatal errors in judgment. Skill diversity in groups means that no one person needs to master everything. Someone might excel at fire making, another at wound care, another at hunting or navigation. This specialization makes the group far more capable than even the most skilled individual could be alone. Perhaps most importantly, groups provide psychological support that prevents the mental deterioration that often precedes physical collapse. Humans are social creatures, and prolonged isolation combined with high stress creates a perfect storm for breakdown. Having others to communicate with, problem solve alongside, and simply share the burden of difficult circumstances dramatically increases resilience. Building a trusted network doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly won't happen after a crisis begins. Start now by establishing relationships with neighbors who share your concern for preparedness without necessarily sharing all your specific plans. Create barter circles where you regularly exchange goods and services, building trust through practical interaction rather than just conversations about hypothetical scenarios. Consider developing mutual aid agreements with like-minded individuals or families, formal or informal arrangements that spell out how you'll support each other during different types of emergencies. These might include shared resources, divided responsibilities, or agreements about who goes where if evacuation becomes necessary. Simple, discrete meetups and trust-building drills strengthen these bonds before they're tested by real crises. Something as basic as a neighborhood cookout, where everyone brings something to share from their own garden or pantry, builds community while subtly identifying who has what resources and skills. The shift in mindset here is crucial. Resilience isn't an individual achievement, it's a community sport. The lone survivor is largely a Hollywood myth. Real survival happens in groups of people who trust each other and bring complementary strengths to the table. We've talked about physical preparation, gear, and skills, but there's a critical aspect of survival that gets far too little attention: mental and emotional resilience. History shows us time and again that when survival situations turn deadly, mental collapses almost always happen before physical ones. This psychological dimension of preparedness might be the most important and yet remains the most neglected. The stressors that break people in crisis situations are predictable. Sleep loss accumulates until decision-making becomes impaired and hallucinations begin. Information isolation, not knowing what's happening, how long the crisis will last, or whether help is coming, creates uncertainty spirals that feed anxiety and panic. The combination of these factors can break even physically strong, well-equipped individuals surprisingly quickly. Building mental resilience requires deliberate practice, not just theoretical understanding. Consider implementing drills specifically designed to strengthen your psychological durability. Try 48-hour blackout weekends where you disconnect from all media, internet, and external information sources while continuing to function effectively. Incorporate cold exposure routines into your life. Even something as simple as ending showers with cold water trains your mind to function through discomfort. Practice navigation exercises without speaking, forcing you to communicate through other means when verbal communication might be dangerous or impossible. And regular fasted hikes with loaded packs build not just physical endurance but the mental toughness to continue functioning when you're simultaneously hungry, tired, and carrying weight. Beyond these specific drills, certain psychological preparations pay enormous dividends in actual crises. Learn problem solving under pressure through activities like timed puzzles, escape rooms, or sports that require quick thinking. Cultivate boredom tolerance by regularly spending time without digital entertainment. Just you and your thoughts, working through problems or simply being present without constant stimulation. And practice improvisation over perfection by deliberately creating scenarios where you must complete tasks with suboptimal tools or insufficient information. The key insight here is profound but simple. Your mindset is what keeps you in the game after your gear fails, your plans fall apart, and unexpected challenges arise. Physical preparation without mental resilience is like building a house with no foundation. Impressive until the first strong wind comes along. Talk is cheap, and theory only gets you so far. If you're serious about survival, you need to practice, not just prep. Tactical drills turn abstract plans into concrete performance, revealing weaknesses you'd never discover by simply reading books or watching videos. Start with a 72-hour lockdown in your own home. No leaving, no ordering in, no running to the store for that one thing you forgot. Use only the supplies, water, and power options you've stored for emergencies. This simple exercise invariably reveals critical gaps in your preparations, medications you didn't stock, comfort items that matter more than you realized, or communication methods that prove less reliable than expected. Run timed bug-out drills, both on foot and by vehicle. How long does it actually take to gather your family, load essential supplies, and get on the road? Most people discover their estimates were wildly optimistic the first time they clocked this process. Night navigation challenges test your ability to find your way when visibility is limited and landmarks are obscured. Silent cooking drills force you to prepare food without making noise that could attract attention in scenarios where operational security matters. Group movement using only hand signals builds nonverbal communication skills that could be crucial when noise discipline is essential. The most valuable drills deliberately create stress by introducing failures and complications. Designate certain pieces of gear as broken for the duration of a practice session and figure out workarounds. Run no light, no speech, no electronics scenarios where you must accomplish tasks without the tools and methods you normally rely on. These artificial constraints reveal dependencies and weaknesses that remain hidden during normal operations. The real power comes from the feedback loop these drills create. After every test, adjust your plan and gear based on what you learned. Maybe you discover your bug-out bag is too heavy to carry comfortably for more than an hour. Perhaps your water filtration system works but is tediously slow for a family of 4. Or you might find that your communication plan breaks down when cell networks are unavailable. Each of these discoveries allows you to adapt before facing these problems in a genuine emergency. Remember, no plan survives contact with reality intact. The purpose of drills isn't to confirm that your existing approach is perfect. It's to systematically identify and address the flaws before your life depends on getting it right. Let's talk about some less common but potentially life-saving tactics that can give you a critical edge when conventional approaches fail. These are the tricks and techniques that experienced preparedness experts use, but rarely make it into mainstream survival guides. When it comes to cache locations, places to hide supplies along evacuation routes or near bug-out locations, creativity saves lives. Use fake irrigation heads that appear to be part of sprinkler systems, but actually conceal small waterproof containers. Hollow out sections of logs that look like natural deadfall, but can store sealed packages. Or use tree-based markers that appear to be nothing more than paint splashes or survey marks, but actually indicate buried supplies nearby. The key is that these caches should be invisible to anyone who doesn't know exactly what to look for. Water acquisition hacks can make the difference between life and death. when conventional sources are contaminated or controlled. Solar stills using nothing but plastic sheeting and containers can extract clean water from seemingly barren ground. Transpiration bags placed around leafy branches collect water that plants naturally release during photosynthesis. And in urban environments, air conditioner condensation provides a surprisingly reliable water source that most people completely overlook. Security through misdirection offers protection that doesn't rely on confrontation or firepower. Decoy supplies packages that appear valuable but actually contain nothing of use, can satisfy thieves without sacrificing actual resources. False trails created by dragging branches or using irregular footprints lead potential threats away from your actual location. And noise-based deterrence, from recorded conversations to simple wind chimes, can make abandoned areas appear occupied or occupied areas appear more heavily defended than they actually are. Off-grid communication becomes vital when conventional networks fail. GMRS repeaters with proper licensing offer extended-range radio contact. CB radios paired with simple codebooks allow secure information exchange without complex encryption. Even light-based signals using mirrors during day or flashlights at night can communicate complex messages over distances without any electronic footprint. Everyday items can be repurposed in ways that multiply their survival value. Regular chapstick serves as a surprisingly effective fire accelerant when conventional tinder is wet or scarce. Dental floss combined with a sewing needle creates field sutures strong enough for emergency wound closure. And ordinary tampons can be separated into sterile wound dressings or used as pre-screens for water filtration systems. These unconventional approaches share a common thread. They don't require specialized equipment or extraordinary skills, just creative application of common knowledge and materials. Often it's these improvised solutions that make the difference when primary systems fail and backup plans falter. We've covered a lot of ground today, so let's bring it all together. The conventional wisdom about bugging out isn't just incomplete. For most people, it's dangerously wrong. Bugging out isn't a lifestyle or identity. It's a tool to be used selectively and strategically when specific conditions make it necessary. Most people who default to bugging out as their primary plan will fail unless they dramatically rethink their approach. The alternative isn't doing nothing. It's building a layered, flexible response system that starts with being prepared to shelter in place and includes strategic relocation options when staying put becomes impossible. It's prioritizing skills over gear, community over isolation, and practical experience over theoretical knowledge. It's understanding that survival isn't about heroic individual action but smart, sustainable decisions that preserve resources and reduce unnecessary risks. The harsh reality is that preparation isn't a one-time event or purchase. It's a lifestyle of continuous learning, testing, and adaptation. The most valuable survival tool you have isn't in your bug-out bag or garage, it's between your ears. And that tool needs regular exercise through practical drills and mental conditioning to be ready when you need it most. So, here's my challenge to you. Take one aspect of what we've discussed today and implement it this week. Rethink your evacuation plan tonight. Run a realistic scenario this weekend. Test your preps under actual constraints rather than imagining how they might work. Preparation without testing is just wishful thinking. And in survival situations, wishful thinking gets people killed. If you found value in this breakdown, consider supporting the channel by hitting that like button, subscribing if you haven't already, and sharing this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment letting me know which aspect of realistic preparation you're focusing on next. I read every comment and do my best to respond. Until next time, stay ready, stay grounded, and remember that true preparedness isn't about fear. It's about freedom through capability.